Until now, a vast number of various places, temples, monuments, and cities built by our ancestors in ancient times continue to inspire awe. However, admiration for them does not tell us how they were created. The methods and techniques used by our ancestors in construction still remain a great mystery. We can witness this by looking at the technological wonders in this video. A tale of fantastic technological achievements would be incomplete without mentioning the ancient Inca civilization in South America. How did they manage to carve a square aqueduct in volcanic rock at an altitude of over 3 kilometers above sea level in Peru? Was it really possible 3,500 years ago? Perhaps it was the result of an advanced civilization that existed before the Inca. But unfortunately, there were no traces left in this area that could help identify them. Even the name of the place is not particularly remarkable. The aqueduct is called Cumbe Mayo, which means thin river. This does not give us any clues as to who could have created the oldest human-built structure in all of South America. The precisely carved aqueduct carries water from the melting snow areas down the mountains to the cities and dry valleys. This highly skilled work makes us wonder if the stone monks, located 18 meters above the aqueduct, have a natural origin. Azerbaijan has numerous legends and tales about the history of the Maiden Tower in Baku. Unfortunately, none of them seem to have brought us closer to the truth behind the existence of this building. Baku is an old city surrounded by a wall, and the Maiden Tower is the oldest structure within it. It is so old that no one can say for certain when it was built or how it was named by the people who constructed it. The time of its construction remains a mystery for historians to this day. Many believe it was erected in the 12th century. However, there is a significant difference between the stones used in the first 3 floors of the building and those used in the remaining floors. The age of the lower 3 floors is likely 2,500 years or possibly even older. This means the tower predates Islam, and if it is a religious structure, it was most likely built by Zoroastrians. There is also a prevailing belief among scholars that this tower was associated with a sun cult, which apparently influenced its design. The name Maiden Tower derives from a legend about the king's daughter who tragically leapt from the tower's top to avoid an arranged marriage. However, there are no historical pieces of evidence supporting the authenticity of this legend. The next location is the rock sculptures of Absalom, but you may know them as the Rock of Ratanu. You can find them on the coast of the small French town of Saint-Malo in the Brittany region. Absalom lived in the 19th century, but at the age of 55 suffered a severe stroke that left him paralyzed on one side of his body and also deaf and mute. He became a hermit and lived among the rocks of Ratanu, using only one side of his body to carve whimsical shapes into the rocks. It is believed that he also created an underground gallery of wooden figures, but that it was mostly destroyed by a fire in 1944. This location features over 300 unique stone sculptures, many of which are rumored to have been inspired by folklore tales of the Ratanu pirate clan, after which the area was named. Members of the clan were fishermen and smugglers, reputed to have superhuman vision that allowed them to see the sea for miles. The tales are fanciful, but the sculptures are truly fantastic, especially considering they were created by a one-handed man. Now let's move on to something truly awe-inspiring in terms of both complexity and size. We're talking about the Yangshan Quarry in China, where much of the stone used in the grand monuments of the city of Nanjing was mined. Not all of the stones from the quarry were moved. Some, including an unfinished stele, remain there. The story goes that the creation of the stele was commissioned by Emperor Yongle in the 15th century, who intended it to be a monument honoring his father in the Ming Xiaoling Mausoleum. The workers managed to carve some parts of the steel before giving up, astonished by the scale of this creation, nearly 9 meters wide, 4.5 meters thick, and 46 meters tall. It's difficult to imagine how they were able to carve something so enormous and there was no chance of it being moved. We can't help but wonder why our ancestors were convinced that it was all achievable. The mastery of metal production and shaping techniques was a significant technological breakthrough of our ancestors. But when did this breakthrough occur? The evidence suggests that it happened much earlier than what is written in historical books. How did this technology emerge in Cambodia, Peru, and ancient Egypt thousands of years ago? These countries are located on different continents and thousands of kilometers apart. Archaeological research shows that small metal clamps were used to hold large stone blocks, even in renowned structures like the Parthenon in Athens. However, historians tend to embellish the facts as they cannot find an explanation. Imprints of the clamps are clearly visible on several adjacent stones in significant ancient buildings, as seen in these photographs. However, the actual clamps have not been found. The most plausible explanation is that the material was stolen or repurposed in other construction projects long after the megaliths were built, but the imprints of the clamps remain as evidence of their existence. During the analysis of these imprints at Puma Punku, traces of platinum, a metal with a melting temperature over 1,700 degrees Celsius, were discovered. How our ancestors could melt and use it for construction purposes remains a mystery today. People first started harvesting olive oil approximately 5,000 years ago. The process of obtaining oil involves cultivating olive trees, collecting the olives in September, crushing them in a press, and finally collecting the golden juice that flows out. In ancient times, olive oil was versatile. It was used for cooking, as fuel for lamps, to make soap, and even for medicinal purposes. To this day, olive oil remains an essential ingredient in most Middle Eastern cuisine. The technological processes of olive oil extraction evolved over time, and we can see the remnants of one of the most intricate ancient oil presses in a four-room house near Tel Hazor Palace in Israel. Some parts of the ancient machine have been reconstructed to demonstrate the process to tourists, but the main structure of the oil press is approximately 2,800 years old. This leveraged press was used for another 8 centuries. Stone weights were hung on the lever, and under their weight, oil would begin to be extracted from the olives and flow into a built-in reservoir in the floor. It may seem simple, but this technology was highly efficient. Determining the age of the rock-cut monuments at Gopachal in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh requires a significant amount of historical data. The carved figures, also known as the Gopachal Pavat Jain monuments, could have been created as early as the 7th century. Another theory suggests that they may have been carved much more recently, in the 15th century. The fact that scientists cannot pinpoint the exact time period speaks to how little we know about these remarkable artifacts adorning the walls of Gwalior Fort. Experts state that most of the figures depict a turtle and represent the traditional seated Padmasana pose. All of the sculptures are naked, which is customary in Jain iconography. Rock-cut figures exist in other parts of India, but none have the sheer abundance of monumental statues found in the vicinity of Gopachal Rock. It gives the impression that Jains attempted to transform the entire rock into one massive sanctuary. According to history, the Mongol Emperor Babar ordered the statues to be disfigured in 1527, but the religious community eventually restored them, adding new sculpted heads to the figures. Our next ancient mystery is also known by several names. Most people refer to it as the Tomb of Absalom, but it is also sometimes called the Pillar of Absalom. Regardless of its name, it is located in the Kidron Valley in Jerusalem. The origin of this monumental rock-cut tomb, notable for its conical roof, is shrouded in mystery. The association with Absalom, the son of King David, comes from ancient tradition. However, modern archaeologists and scholars argue that such a connection is unlikely. It is believed that Absalom lived around 3,000 years ago, while the tomb, based on archaeological and architectural features, dates back to approximately the 1st century BCE, hundreds of years after Absalom's death. Furthermore, only the lower half of the monument is a tomb. The upper half is a nefesh, a type of funerary monument. It is presumed to be dedicated to people buried in the neighboring caves, as well as those interred in the lower half of the monument. In reality, there are 3 burials in the burial chamber, but we do not know who was buried in each of them. The Pillar of Absalom was clearly built for very important individuals, but we may never know their true identities. Earlier in the video, we have already talked about France, and now we return there to show you an incredible underground church. Building a church underground is much more challenging than above ground for obvious reasons. However, ancient builders perhaps saw working on such a project as the highest manifestation of their faith. Whatever the reasons, their work led to the creation of the underground Church of St. John, located in the French village of Abbaye-Cedron. It is the largest underground church in all of Europe. Scientists and archaeologists note that the entire church was carved by hand into solid rock in the 12th century. The church is designed in a slightly rustic style, which is understandable considering the methods used to create it. However, despite this, the scale is impressive. In the main hall of the church, there are 2 enormous columns supporting a ceiling that reaches a height of approximately 18 meters, and a hand-carved staircase against the back wall allows visitors to ascend and view the site from a bird's-eye perspective. Experts believe that the church was originally built as a semi-secret refuge for important religious artifacts. The Roman reliquary in the largest side chamber is said to be a legacy of the First Crusade, while the 80 sarcophagi in another side chamber, according to historians, contain the remains of saints and martyrs. It's unfortunate, however, that both claims cannot be proven. There is no definitive answer to the question of the color of the Likergus Cup. It can appear in one of 2 colors, depending on the angle from which you view it and how well it is illuminated at the moment you look at it. This 1600-year-old artifact has intrigued everyone who has seen it for many centuries. The cup was made using dichroic glass, which can reflect light particles differently. If the light is coming from behind the glass, the surface of the cup will appear green. But if the light is directed straight in front of it, the color will become red. The person who made this glass likely understood the principles of the material they were using, even if they didn't know why it behaved in such a way. Archaeologists have never found anything similar, which is perhaps not surprising considering how fragile glass cups are. Therefore, we cannot rule out the possibility that only one ancient Roman artisan appreciated the potential of this glass and understood how to create beautiful objects from it. But along with the craftsmen, the secrets of making such cups were also lost to the grave. If viewed from above, this incredible invention in Ghana, near Iran, appears to be nothing more than a series of wrinkled holes in the ground. In reality, it is one vast interconnected underground structure known as a Canad, an ancient marvel of hydraulic engineering, a form of water transportation technology still used in some parts of the world. The Canad is one of the greatest surviving examples of an irrigation system. Faced with life on dry land 3,000 years ago, ancient Persians realized that the only way to survive was to bring water to them. That's how the Canad was devised. The system consists of underground tunnels that stretch for many miles, connecting wells to underground reservoirs. The visible openings from above provide ventilation to the tunnels as well as access for water collection. Constructing a single medium-sized tunnel would take many years, as all the work was done with picks and shovels, and constructing something the size of a Canad would take decades. Similar systems still exist in Libya, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. So far today, we have explored several quite grand mysteries, but the discovery we're about to discuss now is much smaller in scale, yet it is equally worthy of being included in the list. At first glance, you might assume that this 2,200-year-old figurine is just one of many Egyptian bird figurines. However, upon closer inspection, you will notice that, apart from the eyes and beak, it is much more in common with a modern aircraft than any bird we have ever seen. The wings are thin, straight, and tapered, devoid of feathers, and the tail is square. If the figure resembled an airplane, we could dismiss it as a coincidence, but this sculpture is also aerodynamically perfect. In the 1970s, a research group created a perfectly scaled-up version of the figurine and demonstrated that it was capable of flying and gliding. Is this an out-of-place artifact, or was there a craftsman somewhere in ancient Egypt who made a flying toy for their child, unaware that they had invented an experimental model aircraft, surpassing their time by 2,000 years? And that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell icon. Your engagement means the world to me. Thank you for your attention. See you soon. Goodbye.